In this video, we're going to discuss warehouse inventory allocation as it relates to forecasts. So the common use for this is if you have one product, we'll just use one product as an example here. This fidget spinner is selling both in the US and also in Canada. Now, so these are two different forecasts because we actually send this inventory to the US FBA, and we also send inventory to Canada FBA. So this is not part of the North America Remote Fulfillment Program, NARF. This would work the same way in UK or EU. If there are two different forecasts in SoStocked, but they're sharing the same inventory at the same warehouse, this is how SoStocked will allocate that inventory. So let's take this US forecast as the primary one. The system is always going to algorithmically favor the forecast with the higher velocity, okay? So this one you can see is selling 9 units a day, this one's selling 5 units a day. So the system will allocate, if there is enough inventory to serve both both forecasts, it'll actually serve both of them for the next transfer only. Let me show you how that works, because there are some limitations, but I want you to understand what you're looking at. So when you go into the larger forecast, meaning the one with the higher velocity, you're going to see the total amount of inventory that's available at that warehouse. In this case, there's 2,500 units. And that data is being pulled from our inventory page right here. Total inventory at the warehouse, we can also check by going here. We can see Amazing Logistics has 2,500. So that's the total amount of inventory at the warehouse is 2,500. We've got this recommendation on July 17th to transfer 285 units. Great. Now what about Canada? Let's go look at Canada. As long as the 2,500 or whatever, as long as this inventory is enough to serve both forecasts, you will also get a recommendation to transfer a portion of that inventory to Canada as well. Again, there has to be enough inventory to serve both forecasts. So now you can see it only shows 2215. If you click on that number, it's going to break down. I've got 2,500 units at Amazing Logistics, but 285 of them are allocated to the US forecast. And that leaves 2215 for this forecast, potentially, or for other. There might be multiple forecasts, and it would list them all out. So this is great for the next, this will work for one, for the next transfer only. Now, if you notice down here, it's not going to show transfers coming out of the US in the future. The system is not set up to overlay multiple forecasts in one forecast. So this inventory allocation module or model really only works for the current inventory at the warehouse right now and the very next transfer. Once you transfer that out, then it'll take this 1910 and it will do the exact same thing all over again. But I just want to make it very clear that if this forecast up here, let me just give you an example. This shows 2,500, transfer 285, it's going to leave you with 2215. This does not show you what's going to happen after you transfer the Canada inventory, because the two forecasts are not overlaid on top of each other. That would get way too complicated and just would make an absolute mess of things. And algorithmically, it's just very, very, very confusing. So keep in mind that the two forecasts are completely separate other than the very first transfer. So this one shows you the full amount because it's the larger velocity, and if you did need to transfer all of it, we would want to make sure all of this is available. So for example, let's say this was selling a lot more than 11 units a day or 9 units a day. Let's say I was selling 150 units a day. This is going to illustrate the limitation of the limitation and kind of limit of the whole model. So what this is doing right now is it's actually telling us to transfer 100%. It says transfer all 2,500 units to the US. And then it says also order another 9,000 units to Amazon. So that's adding it all up. But you can see now I'm selling so much, and based on my min-max requirements at FBA, I need all of that 2,500 for the US. So that's the limitation, is that if you need all of that inventory for the US, well, what about Canada? Canada is just going to have to run out of stock because unfortunately there isn't enough inventory to serve both of them. So that is the limitation, that the one with the higher velocity is going to, if there's not enough inventory for both of them, the system will prefer and allocate that inventory to the forecast with the higher velocity, if there's not enough to serve both of them. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, couldn't the system figure out to send a portion to the US and then a small portion to Canada, even if it's not enough to fulfill the US? Well, technically, yes, but that's not programmed into the system. You, as the owner of the business, you as the inventory management person in your company, you can make that adjudication yourself. So what you could do is you could create this transfer, and then you could just split some of that shipment and decide on your own to send some to Canada. So in this case, what I would do is I would go into the work order where I'm transferring inventory, and I would go ahead and split the shipment. And I have options. I would just say probably split it in half. And then I would decide how much really do I want to send. Maybe I want to send 2,000 to the US and the other 500 to Canada, but that's up to you. The system, since there's not enough to send to both, and we need way more than 2,500 units in the US, it's not going to be able to make that decision for you. So these kind of like splitting hair decisions where you have to figure, that's going to be a little bit on you. So the system does have limitations on that allocation. And then of course, if you were to split it, you'd want to choose the correct forecast down here. So those are kind of the limitations. Also, keep in mind that these order amounts here are not based on sharing inventory between the forecasts. This is how much I need in the US. This is how much I need in Canada. Another way to explain that is you can see here it says, order this amount. Now, in this case, I'm actually sending it direct to FBA. But if I were sending it to the warehouse, let me just pause and show you that real quick. Okay, so I've changed my lead time, so now my orders are not going direct to FBA. They're actually going to the warehouse. It says direct to FBA because that was the name of the original lead time that I edited. But in other words, so this 9,900 units that's going to our warehouse, again, it's going to assume that all of this is available for the US only. Okay, so the inventory allocation does not work for future orders. These have to be kind of managed separately. Technically, you're going to need all of it, right? Because you need 330 units for Canada in order to make all of this happen based on your min-max and all the forecast recommendations and calculation variables that you've set for Canada. And you also need 990 units in the US. So when you place this order, so as long as the lead time is ending at the same warehouse, it's going to combine all of that. So you have enough inventory for both forecasts. So just a quick recap. The inventory allocation per warehouse across multiple forecasts only works for the next transfer on the forecast. So it's a transfer to transfer allocation. It will not overlay multiple forecasts in one page where you can look at one inventory timeline. That might be something that we can build in the future. Like I said, it's very complicated. It gets very messy when you're trying to look at all that. So just beware of those limiting factors and manage your shipments accordingly. Cheers.